All right, we were born to run, and we are going to run today with our first ever guest on the Iona Athletics podcast is the director of the cross country program, Coach Joe Pienta. Coach, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for having this podcast and having me on. Hopefully, you get a few listeners. Although I can't tell you how many are going to tune in just because of me.
Don't sell yourself short, Coach. I feel like you're going to be very entertaining.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. But yeah, no, thanks for having me.
Not a problem. So I want to get started with a little bit about you. Obviously, back when your college days, you ran track at Albany, so you were successful there. What made you decide, you know what, I want to become a coach after I'm done? I want to go coach the next generation and become a cross-country coach.
Well, I became obsessed with the sport as a fairly mediocre runner in college. I was okay in high school, got a lot better at the college level, but still not to the level like our guys are at and gals. But I really, to be honest, I went into school, thought I'd become a teacher, and just sort of meandered my way around with this thought in my head that I loved running, and I sort of just got stuck in. I started volunteering at Columbia University with the program there. I worked with some great coaches there, Willie Wood, Chris Miltenberg, John Clemens, and a few others. So I got a great mentorship there. And then went over to Binghamton University, was an assistant coach there under Annette Acuff, and learned a lot there. And just as I was finishing up there, Ricardo Santos hired me at Iona. It was my first full-time coaching gig, and it stuck. So that's the story. But it just kind of started with an obsession with running, and I love the sport in the sense that you get out of it what you put into it. It's all about working hard and working smart, and there's a mental component as well. So it's just kind of an interesting sport for me.
Yeah, I find it interesting you mentioned you want to be a teacher too. I feel like coaching is sort of the perfect marriage between the teaching and the running, and you can combine those things into one passion. I feel like that's a great way to do that.
Yeah, I think it was one of those things where there's a little element of not knowing what the heck I wanted to do in life too. So.
Yeah, well, at least you got that going. But let's go back to the program right now. So there are a lot of newcomers to the program this year. How do you help those newcomers get acclimated not only to the country, because I know a lot of people in Iona's cross-country program come from overseas, but can you explain also how you help them acclimate not only to the U.S. but to the program itself?
Well, for the most part, a lot of our kids want to come here because they do want to be a part of a great program. So they know the expectations. So some of them are on board with what we expect, and it's a seamless transition. A lot of our international kids go through a recruiting process. They get to know the program a bit. But for some kids, it can still be a little bit of a reality check, or they get homesick. So we just try to help them along. Freshman year is a year about developing, as people and understanding what's expected of them, getting used to everything new, regardless of whether you're international or domestic. So we just try to help them get going. We have some great team captains and some senior leadership, and they help a lot in the locker room with getting kids sorted and understanding what they need to be doing to be a part of our program.
Yeah, that leadership definitely helps, and your groups are going to get tested. You have your second meet of the season coming up Friday, September 20th with the 25th annual Brother John Patty Doyle Meet of Champions. For those who are not familiar, can you explain to us the history of this event and how it came to be?
Well, I think it started, 94? I got to do some math. Sam DeRosa can tell you the exact history. He's been to every single one, and he's got a good story about the very first one back in the Iona football days, running around, setting up for it. But it started off, Mick Byrne was coaching here and started, he had been very successful and was starting to, be on the national scene regularly. They wanted to have a good meet here at Van Cortlandt Park. It's a very storied history in terms of cross-country courses, whether you're high school, college. It's a little less famous now, but it's one of those things. It's just been a nice home meet for us. It's right around the corner. We train there, once or twice a week sometimes. And we've had some really good teams come through. We've had some years where not as many teams have come through. We're trying to get it really rolling again. The last couple of years, we've had some good teams come, and getting a lot more teams is kind of the goal over the next few years, to get it back to being kind of a nationally prominent meet.
Yeah, I hear that, and that's definitely going to be something that's going to be we try and do going forward. But last year was your first time coaching the Media Champions as the team director. How was your experience with that event different as the leader of the program compared to your time working as an assistant under Coach Santos?
I think it's just the element of not having Rick around. My first year at Iona, Ricardo stuck me with being in charge of Media Champs, so it really wasn't a big transition. It was just there was a little bit more on my plate, and there's a few things I can delegate to my assistants now. I think Maverick Darling's going to be the next meet director pretty soon. He's got his feet wet this year, and I think he'll be ready for it. But it was the first time I was in charge of it, dealing with the Parks Department permits. I think we had a bus that was late. It was a very stressful week, my first year coaching here as an assistant. Last year, as the head coach, it was pretty seamless. It went really well, so I can't complain.
Yeah, that's definitely good to hear. So obviously your team is getting ready for the meet. So what are your expectations for the program at the meet this year?
Well, we'd like to win. We don't always roll out all of our top kids. It really depends on who's healthy, who's ready to race. We try to individualize training and see where everybody's at. I think it's a little bit different in that regard with a lot of the other sports. Our sport is simply the championship season. Nothing matters except for the MAC championships, NCAA regionals, and ideally the NCAA championships if we make that. So it's just about getting ready for those meets. So this meet serves as a great way to see where we're at. It's kind of a test, see how well guys and girls are running, how much more we need to work, if we're in a good spot. And hopefully they run well and get confident off of that. But I would like this year to win on both sides, and I think there's some really good teams there. It's not going to be a cakewalk, and I don't think we've won in the men's side in a little while. I'd have to look back. I don't have the results in front of me. But we'll roll out a pretty good team on the men's side, and on the women's side, if everybody's raring to go, we'll have a good team out there.
Absolutely. That'll definitely be a nice goal to try and take home the gold at this meet. But the last question for me, you mentioned in that answer that the Media Champions is just one race at the beginning of the season. It helps you build up towards that championship push to the max, hopefully the NCAAs. You've noted in the past that you want your team to have a quiet underdog mentality. How do you cultivate that buy-in from your student athletes so they're ready for this come championship season?
Well, I think a lot of that came from our finish last year. Finishing 28th in the country didn't leave a great taste in our mouth. We're a team 14 out of the last 17 years that's been top 10 in the country, and that's the expectation every year. So everybody who's returning understands that wasn't a great feeling. And I know 28th in the country ain't bad, but for us, we had a lot more talent on the line. We didn't have a great race, so everybody's pretty fired up. On the women's side, we didn't make it there. We were pretty close. I think there's a lot more there. So I think it's just part of that buy-in is really about what the kids want. How good do they want to be? There's only so much you can do as a coach to get them ready and prepare them mentally, but there's an intrinsic internal factor that you have to want it, and you have to get fired up, and you have to hate getting your butt kicked. So that's part of it. But from day one, when we got back for preseason, it's been about the postseason. We're talking about getting ready and using September and October to get ready for it.
Absolutely. Again, the Media Champions on Friday, September 20th. Coach, thanks for all the time today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, and hopefully the podcast goes well. Thanks for your time, and I'll be looking forward to hopefully you guys interview Coach Plord, women's soccer. He just had a great first win as head coach, and he'll be a pretty entertaining interview, I would gather.
Yeah, well, you were definitely entertaining too. Thanks again, Coach.
All right, thank you. Take care.
Take care.